17 Black celebrities who tragically died in 2025. What if I told you that 2025 became a heartbreaking year for Black culture, taking away voices, champions, pioneers and legends whose work shaped generations, from George Foreman and Roberta Flack to Angie Stone, Roy Ayers, Sam Moore and Irv Gotti. The losses came across music, sports and entertainment, some after long battles, others with shocking suddenness. But behind every headline was a lifetime of triumph, struggle, reinvention and unforgettable influence. Which loss shocked you the most in 2025? Tell us in the comments before we begin. Subscribe to Golden Black Legends, turn on notifications and stay with us as we honor 17 remarkable Black figures who left us in 2025 and the legacies they left behind. George Foreman. George Foreman's life seemed to contain several lifetimes. Long before millions knew him as the smiling face behind a famous kitchen grill, he was one of boxing's most intimidating heavyweight champions. Born in Texas and raised in Houston's Fifth Ward, Foreman captured Olympic gold in 1968, turned professional the following year and demolished Joe Frazier in 1973 to become heavyweight champion. His devastating punching power made him feared around the world. Then came one of boxing's unforgettable reversals. Muhammad Ali defeated Foreman in the legendary 1974 Rumble in the Jungle. Foreman eventually stepped away from boxing after a religious awakening, became an ordained minister and devoted years to preaching. Yet his story was far from finished. After roughly a decade away, he launched an improbable comeback that many observers initially struggled to take seriously. In '94, at age 45, Foreman shocked the sporting world by knocking out Michael Moorer to regain the heavyweight championship, becoming the oldest man at that time to win the heavyweight crown. He finally retired in 1997 with a professional record of 76 wins and 5 losses, including 68 knockouts. Outside the ring, another transformation followed. The George Foreman grill sold more than 100 million units, helping make him even more financially successful than boxing had. On March 21, 2025, Foreman died in Houston at 76. Importantly, his family said he passed peacefully, surrounded by loved ones, but did not publicly disclose a cause of death. Therefore, claims that he suddenly died from a stroke should not be presented as established fact. Foreman left behind far more than championship belts. He had reinvented himself as a preacher, entrepreneur, father, philanthropist, and unlikely cultural icon. Big George had once conquered the heavyweight division twice, but his greatest victory may have been proving that a life can have more than one extraordinary comeback. Angie Stone. Angie Stone had spent more than 4 decades building a career rooted in soul, R&B, gospel, and the earliest days of hip-hop. Long before Wish I Didn't Miss You became her signature solo hit, she helped make history as a member of The Sequence, whose 1979 single Funk You Up became an important early recording by a female hip-hop group. Later albums, such as Black Diamond and Mahogany Soul, established Stone as one of neo-soul's most recognizable voices. On March 1, 2025, Stone was returning to Atlanta after performing in Mobile, Alabama. She was traveling with members of her entourage in a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van when the vehicle overturned on Interstate 65 near Montgomery at approximately 4:25 a.m. After the van came to rest, it was struck by a large truck. Stone was the only person killed. The other occupants survived. She was 63 years old. That confirmed account is considerably different from sensational versions suggesting Stone was driving alone, financially desperate, or carrying only a few dollars. Those claims should not define her final chapter. Stone had performed shortly before the accident and was scheduled to appear at another event later that same day. Her death felt especially cruel because there was no long public farewell. Fans had seen a performer continuing to do what she had done for decades, stand on stage and sing only hours before tragedy struck. Stone received 3 Grammy nominations during her career, but awards tell only part of her influence. Her warm, lived-in voice connected generations of Black musical tradition. Angie Stone spent decades singing about love, disappointment, resilience, and survival. Then one early morning journey home ended a story that nobody expected was anywhere near its final page. Roberta Flack. Roberta Flack never needed to overpower a song to command attention. Her quiet phrasing, classical musicianship, and extraordinary emotional control made recordings such as "The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face" feel like making love and killing me softly with his song Timeless. Before international fame, she was a classically trained pianist and schoolteacher in Washington, D.C., an unconventional beginning for a woman who would become one of the defining voices of the 1970s. Flack achieved something particularly remarkable at the Grammy Awards. "The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face" won Record of the Year in 1973, followed by "Killing Me Softly" with his song, winning the same award in 1974. Her restrained style proved that emotional power did not require vocal excess. But her later years brought a devastating challenge. In 2022, Flack publicly announced that she had amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS, a progressive neurological disease that had made it impossible for her to sing. The woman whose voice had communicated so much emotion was gradually robbed of the physical ability to use it. On February 24, 2025, Roberta Flack died at her Manhattan home at 88, surrounded by family. Her publicist later confirmed that the cause was complications from ALS. This means claims that a sudden heart attack unexpectedly killed her should not be repeated as fact. Flack's death was heartbreaking, but her story was never simply about its ending. She helped redefine how intimacy could sound on a record and influenced generations of singers who understood that sometimes the softest voice reaches deepest. ALS eventually silenced Roberta Flack herself, but it could never silence the recordings through which generations will continue hearing her. Irv Gotti. Few record executives became as closely identified with an era as Irv Gotti, born Irving Domingo Lorenzo Jr. From Queens, New York, he moved from DJ work into production and eventually co-founded Murder Inc. Records with his brother Chris. During the late 1990s and early 2000s, the label became a major force in hip-hop and R&B, closely associated with artists including Ja Rule and Ashanti. Gotti's fingerprints extended beyond his own label. His production and executive work connected him with major names, including Jay-Z and DMX, while the distinctive mixture of rap and melodic R&B promoted by Murder Inc. helped define mainstream radio during its peak. His career brought enormous success, but also controversies, legal battles, and professional setbacks. Away from music, Gotti faced increasingly serious health problems. He had diabetes, and reports confirmed that he suffered a stroke in 2024. His struggles with diabetes and its impact on his health had also been discussed publicly before his death. On February 5, 2025, Gotti died at only 54 years old. Def Jam confirmed his passing. Early authoritative reporting did not immediately disclose an official cause, so dramatic stories claiming he died alone while reaching for insulin should not be treated as established fact. His death arrived when many people who grew up during Murder Inc.'s dominance were themselves entering middle age. Songs that once seemed like the soundtrack of a new generation had suddenly become reminders of how quickly time had passed. Gotti's legacy remains complicated, but his influence on turn-of-the-century hip-hop and R&B is undeniable. At 54, Irv Gotti was gone far earlier than anyone expected, but the musical era he helped build remains instantly recognizable from its very first beat. Roy Ayers. Roy Ayers created music that seemed capable of traveling through generations without growing old. The vibraphonist, composer, producer, and singer became one of the central figures in jazz-funk, blending jazz improvisation with soul-funk and R&B. His most enduring recording, Everybody Loves the Sunshine, became far more than a 1970s song. It evolved into a musical foundation, sampled and reinterpreted across hip-hop, neo-soul, and contemporary R&B. Born in Los Angeles in 1940, Ayers began as a jazz musician before expanding into increasingly adventurous territory. Albums including He's Coming, Red, Black and Green, and Everybody Loves the Sunshine helped establish the distinctive sound of Roy Ayers' ubiquity. He also composed the soundtrack for the 1973 film Coffee, starring Pam Grier. His influence became even clearer decades later. Artists across hip-hop repeatedly sampled his catalog, while younger musicians embraced the warmth of his vibraphone and his effortless combination of jazz sophistication and street-level groove. Ayers became one of those rare musicians whose work could sound nostalgic and contemporary at the same time. On March 4, 2025, Roy Ayers died in New York City after what his family described as a long illness. He was 84 years old. His family announced his death while requesting privacy, meaning cinematic stories about his exact final moments should not be presented as factual without evidence. For longtime listeners, the loss represented the passing of one of jazz funk's essential architects. Yet Ayers had achieved something musicians spent lifetimes pursuing. His sound had become bigger than his own generation. His vibraphone could be dreamy, funky, romantic, or hypnotic, sometimes within the same recording. Roy Ayers eventually left the world in 2025, but as long as people keep searching for sunshine in music, his sound will never feel very far away. Young Scooter. Young Scooter built his reputation by turning hardship into music. Born Kenneth Edward Bailey in South Carolina and raised in Atlanta, he emerged from the city's influential trap scene and became known for mixtapes including Street Lottery. His collaborations with artists such as Future, Gucci Mane, Young Thug, and Zaytoven gave him credibility far beyond Atlanta. Unlike rappers chasing polished celebrity images, Scooter's appeal came from a raw style that reflected the streets he knew. Then came March 28, 2025, his 39th birthday. Atlanta police responded to a 911 call reporting a dispute involving a weapon at a residence. When officers arrived, Scooter fled from the property on foot. Police emphasized that officers did not fire their weapons and that he was not killed in a car chase, despite inaccurate versions that later circulated online. According to the Fulton County medical examiner, Scooter injured himself while climbing over two fences during the escape. A severe penetrating wound to his right thigh damaged a major blood vessel, causing extensive blood loss. His death was ruled an accident. The finding made the circumstances particularly shocking: no fatal gunshot and no dramatic vehicle collision, just an injury sustained during a frantic attempt to get away. His death arrived on the very day he turned 39, adding another heartbreaking detail to an already unusual tragedy. For Atlanta hip-hop fans, Scooter represented a generation that helped transform local street music into an international sound. He had survived the instability he so often described in his records and built a career lasting more than a decade. Yet his final moments unfolded far from any concert stage. Young Scooter entered March 28, celebrating another year of life. Before that birthday was over, one unexpected injury had made it his last. Sam Moore. When Sam Moore sang, restraint was almost impossible. As the soaring tenor of Sam and Dave, he helped transform gospel-style call and response into some of the most explosive soul music of the 1960s. Alongside Dave Prater, Moore recorded classics including Hold On, I'm Comin', I Thank You, and the Grammy-winning Soul Man. Their performances were so intense that the duo earned a reputation as one of soul music's most electrifying live acts. Moore's road, however, was never easy. Sam and Dave separated amid personal tensions, and Moore later spoke openly about his struggles with drug addiction. He credited his wife Joyce with helping him seek treatment and said he overcame his addiction in 1981. Rather than disappearing with the era that made him famous, Moore continued performing and recording for decades. Recognition eventually followed. Sam and Dave entered the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1992, while Moore remained admired by musicians ranging from Al Green to Bruce Springsteen. His unmistakable voice connected gospel tradition, Southern soul, and generations of performers who came afterward. On January 10, 2025, Moore died in Coral Gables, Florida at 89 years old. His publicist confirmed that he died from complications while recovering from surgery. That documented account is important because more dramatic stories about prolonged isolation or mysterious health problems are unnecessary and unsupported. Moore had survived addiction-changing musical fashions, the breakup of his legendary partnership, and the death of Prater in 1988. He kept singing through it all. When Sam Moore finally left the stage in 2025, soul music lost more than a famous singer, it lost one of the voices that taught America how powerful two words soul man could sound. Dwayne Wiggins. Dwayne Wiggins helped create a sound that many listeners associate instantly with black music in the late 1980s and 1990s. As a founding member of Tony Tone, alongside his brother Raphael Saadiq and cousin Christian Riley Wiggins, blended R&B with funk, jazz gospel, and new jack swing. Songs such as Feels Good Anniversary and It Never Rains in Southern California became enduring favorites. The Oakland group achieved major commercial success before internal tensions contributed to its separation after the platinum-selling 1996 album House of Music. Wiggins nevertheless continued working as a musician, producer, and mentor. His influence extended behind the scenes, where he helped nurture emerging talent and supported young performers who would later establish significant careers. Then came an emotional reunion. In 2023, the original Tony Tone members toured together for the first time in nearly 3 decades. Wiggins told the Associated Press that the group had new material and wanted to release music carrying the right energy. It seemed that an important musical relationship had finally found another chapter. Behind that optimism, Wiggins was facing a private medical battle. His family revealed that he had been fighting bladder cancer for more than a year. On March 7, 2025, he died at 64. His family emphasized that even during his illness, he remained committed to his loved ones, music fans, and community. That reality is powerful enough without invented stories about dying abandoned or suffering dramatic backstage episodes. Wiggins had spent decades creating music about celebration, romance, and connection. His reunion with his musical family ultimately became even more meaningful because time was shorter than anyone realized. Dwayne Wiggins left at 64, but every anniversary now carries a little more meaning for the listeners who grew up with his music. Jerry Butler. Jerry Butler earned the nickname the Iceman because of his controlled, understated performance style, but his voice carried extraordinary warmth. Raised in Chicago after his family moved north from Mississippi, Butler grew up around gospel music and befriended Curtis Mayfield. Together they helped form the Impressions, and the 1958 recording For Your Precious Love transformed the young Butler into a star before he was 20. His solo career produced classics, including He Will Break Your Heart, Never Give You Up, Hey, Western Union Man, and Only the Strong Survive. Working with Philadelphia producers Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff, Butler also helped develop the lush combination of strings, rhythm, and soul that anticipated the famous Philadelphia sound. His songwriting extended beyond his own records. He collaborated with Otis Redding on I've Been Loving You Too Long. But Butler accomplished something unusual after musical fame. He entered politics and served as a Cook County commissioner for more than 3 decades, demonstrating that his public life could continue far beyond the recording studio. The Impressions were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1991. On February 20, 2025, Butler died at his Chicago home at 85 years old. His niece confirmed that the cause was Parkinson's disease. This contradicts sensational accounts suggesting he spent his final days forgotten and alone in a nursing facility. Butler had spent more than 6 decades moving between music, public service, songwriting, and advocacy. The title of his greatest anthem now feels almost autobiographical. Jerry Butler lived long enough to prove the message he once sang to millions: through changing times, disappointment, and age, only the strong survive. DJ Unk. For anyone who remembers mid-2000s, Southern hip-hop DJ Unk could transform the opening seconds of a record into an invitation to move. Born Anthony Leonard Platt, the Atlanta rapper broke nationally with his 2006 album Beaten Down, Yo Block, and the infectious singles Walk It Out and Two Step. Walk It Out climbed into the Billboard Hot 100's top 10 and became inseparable from clubs, parties, and dance floors of that era. But success did not protect Unk from serious health concerns. In 2009, when he was still a young man, he suffered a heart attack. He later spoke publicly about changing aspects of his lifestyle, including reducing alcohol and smoking. That history became painfully significant years later. On January 24, 2025, Unky's wife, Sherkita Longplatt, announced that he had died. He was only 43 years old. His family subsequently said that the cause was cardiac arrest. The loss stunned Atlanta's music community because Unk belonged to a generation whose biggest records still felt recent rather than historical. His story should not be distorted with unsupported details about expired medication, unpaid bills, an empty refrigerator, or dying forgotten in poverty. Those cinematic additions are not necessary. What is documented is already deeply sad. An artist who had experienced serious cardiovascular trouble years earlier died suddenly in his early 40s. Unk's commercial peak may have been concentrated in one unforgettable period, but cultural impact is not always measured by decades at number one. Sometimes one song becomes permanently attached to a generation. DJ Unk was only 43 when the music stopped, but the moment someone says "Walk It Out," an entire era of Atlanta hip-hop immediately starts moving again. Chris Jasper was never simply the man standing behind the keyboards. As a crucial member of the extended Isley Brothers lineup and later Isley Jasper, his synthesizers, songwriting, arranging, and production helped shape some of the most sophisticated funk and soul recordings of the 1970s and 1980s. Born in Cincinnati, Jasper studied classical music and eventually earned a law degree, an unusual combination for a musician at the center of a major R&B group. During the Isley Brothers' celebrated 3+3 era, his musical contributions could be heard across recordings such as For the Love of You, Between the Sheets, and Fight the Power. After the six-member lineup separated, Jasper joined Marvin and Ernie Isley to create Isley Jasper Isley. That trio produced Jasper's biggest lead vocal success, Caravan of Love. Released in 1985, the uplifting anthem reached number 1 on Billboard's R&B chart and was later famously covered by the House Martins. Jasper subsequently pursued a solo career while maintaining ownership and creative control through his own music ventures. His final chapter moved painfully fast. According to his family, Jasper was diagnosed with cancer in December 2024. Only about 2 months later, on February 23, 2025, he died at 73. Therefore, claims that he had secretly battled stage 4 lung cancer since 2020 should not be repeated without evidence. His family remembered him not merely as an entertainer but as a husband, father, musician, and man of faith whose work carried messages of love and unity. For listeners, perhaps no song captures that spirit better than Caravan of Love. Chris Jasper's final illness was brief, but the music he spent decades constructing continues carrying his message forward, one generation joining another in the caravan. Cocoa Tea. Cocoa Tea could make reggae sound intimate without losing its power. Born Calvin George Scott in Clarendon, Jamaica. He began recording as a teenager but achieved his major breakthrough during the early 1980s with Rocking Dolly. From there, his smooth, unmistakable delivery helped make songs such as Lost My Sonia, Young Lover Tune In, and She Loves Me Now favorites throughout Jamaica and the international reggae community. Working with influential producers, including Henry Jonjo, Laws King Jammy, and Bobby Digital, Cocoa Tea became part of the generation that helped bridge roots, reggae, and emerging dancehall. Unlike performers who relied on aggression, his strength came from melody. Even politically themed material carried the relaxed vocal warmth that made listeners recognize him within seconds. Behind the scenes, however, Coco T eventually faced a serious illness. Reports following his death confirmed that he had battled a cancer-related illness for several years. His health struggles gradually removed him from active performance, but friends and fellow musicians continued supporting him during treatment. On March 11, 2025, Coco T died in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, at age 65. Later reporting stated that he suffered cardiac arrest after his extended battle with cancer. That verified account should replace dramatic claims about dying alone after collapsing outside his home or other unconfirmed final scenes. His passing brought tributes across Jamaica and the reggae world. Prime Minister Andrew Holness praised both his musical contribution and generosity toward others. For roughly half a century, Coco T had turned simple melodies into songs people carried through their lives. The singer eventually fell silent in 2025, but the warmth in Coco T's voice remains unmistakably Jamaican and unmistakably timeless. Junior Bridgeman achieved something almost unheard of. His remarkable NBA career eventually became only the first chapter of an even greater success story. Born in East Chicago, Indiana, Bridgeman starred at the University of Louisville, helping the Cardinals reach the 1975 Final Four before being selected 8th overall in that year's NBA draft. Most of his professional career was spent with the Milwaukee Bucks. Across 12 NBA seasons, Bridgeman scored 517 points, and Milwaukee eventually retired his number 2 jersey. Yet he understood that basketball could not last forever. While still playing, he began studying the restaurant business, preparing himself for a life most athletes rarely considered so carefully. After retirement, that preparation produced extraordinary results. Bridgeman built a business empire that at one point included more than 450 Wendy's and Chili's locations across 20 states. He later entered Coca-Cola, bottling, acquired Ebony and Jet, and became involved in numerous corporate ventures. In 2024, his journey came full circle when he purchased a stake in the Milwaukee Bucks, the franchise for which he had once played. Then on March 11, 2025, tragedy arrived unexpectedly. Bridgeman suffered a medical emergency while attending a fundraising event at a Louisville hotel. He died at 71 years old. This contradicts the dramatic transcript version suggesting he was discovered dead, alone, at his corporate headquarters. His legacy extended well beyond wealth. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver remembered Bridgeman as a mentor to generations of athletes seeking success after sports. Junior Bridgeman entered public life as a basketball player, became an extraordinary businessman, and ultimately showed generations of athletes that the final buzzer does not have to mean the end of the game. DJ Funk spent decades making music designed to move bodies. Born Charles Chambers in Chicago, he became one of the most important figures associated with ghetto house, the raw, fast-moving branch of Chicago house music that flourished during the 1990s. His tracks were deliberately direct heavy bass, relentless percussion, repetitive vocal samples, and they carried the uncompromising energy of underground clubs far beyond his hometown. Working closely with Chicago's Dance Mania label, Funk built a catalog that influenced generations of electronic artists. Records such as Work, Dead Body Pump, It and Run became staples of the scene. His 1999 album Booty House Anthems further expanded his audience, while his influence eventually reached artists across house techno and global club culture. Behind the music, however, Chambers faced a devastating illness. In 2024, supporters learned that he was battling stage 4 cancer, and fundraising efforts were organized to assist with medical expenses. The disease progressed rapidly, but the DJ remained deeply connected to the musical community that had supported his work for decades. On March 4, 2025, DJ Funk died at 54 years old. His death was confirmed by friends and fellow musicians bringing tributes from Chicago and throughout the electronic music world. Reliable reports identified advanced cancer as the illness he had been fighting. There is no need to add unsupported stories about methamphetamine, liver rupture arrests, or hundreds of unreleased recordings supposedly buried with him. Funk was never dependent on mainstream celebrity to establish his importance. His legacy lived underground, where innovation often begins. DJ Funk died in 2025, but every pounding beat influenced by Chicago ghetto house carries a little of the fearless energy he spent a lifetime creating. Tommy Hunt. Tommy Hunt belonged to a generation of singers whose voices connected gospel, doo-wop, R&B, and soul long before those styles became historical categories. Born Charles James Hunt in Pittsburgh in 1933, he experienced an extraordinarily difficult childhood before finding purpose in music. Eventually, that journey carried him into one of the most important vocal groups of the era, the Flamingos. Hunt joined the Flamingos in the 1950s and participated in the period surrounding their legendary recording of I Only Have Eyes for You. After leaving the group, he established a solo career and recorded Human, which became a US R&B success in 1961. But his story took another unexpected turn decades later when British audiences embraced his music through the Northern Soul movement. Rather than fading into nostalgia, Hunt discovered an enthusiastic second audience overseas. He relocated to England and spent many years performing for Northern Soul devotees, becoming an admired figure within a culture that had rescued numerous overlooked American soul recordings from obscurity. On February 12, 2025, Tommy Hunt died at 91 years old. His passing was confirmed by those close to him and prompted tributes from the Northern Soul community. This documented timeline corrects the transcript's January 27th date. Likewise, stories that Hunt died forgotten and alone in an Atlanta apartment while holding an old photograph should not be presented as fact. Hunt's life had actually traveled an extraordinary distance from childhood hardship to American R&B and eventually to renewed recognition thousands of miles away. Few singers receive a genuine second act. Tommy Hunt did. By the time his journey ended at 91, the singer, once embraced by American soul, had also become a treasured legend to audiences across the Atlantic. Gwen McCrae. Gwen McCrae possessed the kind of voice that could turn heartbreak into something irresistible. Born in Pensacola, Florida, she became one of the defining voices of Miami soul and disco during the 1970s. Her breakthrough arrived with Rockin' Chair, the 1975 hit that reached #1 on Billboard's R&B chart and crossed into the pop top 10. Other recordings, including 90% of Me Is You, would later find new audiences through hip-hop sampling and rare groove culture. McCrae's career was closely connected to Miami's influential TK Records, but she developed an identity separate from her then-husband singer George McCrae. Her combination of gospel intensity, sensual phrasing, and dance floor rhythm made her music recognizable decades after its original release. Life changed dramatically in 2012 when McCrae suffered a stroke while performing in England. The medical emergency left her with significant physical challenges, including paralysis on one side. Yet she survived and continued receiving support from fans and fellow musicians as she adapted to a very different life. On February 21, 2025, Gwen McCrae died at a care facility in North Miami Beach. She was 81 years old. This documented account is important because stories claiming she was discovered alone in a chair at her Pensacola home should not be treated as fact. Her death marked the loss of another important voice from an extraordinary period in Black American music. McCrae may never have achieved the household name status of some contemporaries, but influence is not measured only by fame. Her recordings traveled far beyond their original era. Gwen McCrae left us in 2025, but whenever that unmistakable opening groove begins, Rockin' Chair still brings an entire generation back to the dance floor. Voletta Wallace. Voletta Wallace never planned to become a public figure. Born in Jamaica, she immigrated to the United States and worked as a preschool teacher while raising her only son, Christopher Wallace, largely as a single mother in Brooklyn. The world would eventually know that child by two unforgettable names, the notorious B.I.G. and Biggie Smalls. Her life changed permanently when Christopher was murdered in Los Angeles on March 9, 1997, at only 24. Wallace suddenly became not only a grieving mother, but also one of the central guardians of her son's legacy. She spent the following decades helping preserve his music, participating in documentaries and public events, and speaking openly about the pain of losing him before his career had reached its full potential. Wallace also became involved with the Christopher Wallace Memorial Foundation, supporting educational initiatives and community programs. She appeared in projects examining Biggie's life and death and remained closely associated with celebrations of his musical influence. Her presence helped ensure that discussions about Biggie included the person behind the mythology, a son whose mother had watched his extraordinary rise from Brooklyn to worldwide fame. On February 21, 2025, Voletta Wallace died in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania at 78 years old. Monroe County Coroner Thomas Yanak said she died of natural causes at her home. Therefore, claims describing a specific final struggle with heart failure should not be presented as confirmed unless supported by additional official evidence. For nearly 28 years, Wallace lived with a loss no parent expects to endure, yet she transformed that grief into stewardship, protecting the memory of a son who became one of hip-hop's greatest icons. Voletta Wallace spent decades keeping Biggie's legacy alive. When she died in 2025, hip-hop lost not another rapper, but the mother who had guarded one of its most important stories. The losses of 2025 remind us that even the brightest careers eventually reach their final chapter. From George Foreman and Roberta Flack to Angie Stone, Roy Ayers, Sam Moore and Dwayne Wiggins. These remarkable figures left behind achievements that stretched across boxing, soul, R&B, hip-hop, jazz, reggae, and business. Some lived into their 80s and 90s. Others were taken far too soon, but their influence cannot be measured simply by how many years they lived. Which of these losses affected you the most, and which legend do you believe left the greatest legacy? Share your answer and your favorite memory in the comments. Subscribe to Golden Black Legends for more respectful stories, celebrating the black icons whose contributions deserve to be remembered for generations.